Okay, first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, let me just throw this at you. Every one of those parentheses is pretty much worthless. I don't know why the book does it or why people do that. They really don't matter. And what usually confuses people is you just got a whole bunch of minuses and pluses here. Okay? This is, I think, probably the best way for you to figure this, to do this. First thing I would want for you to do is simplify this. Well, yeah. Think about this, okay? Anytime you see two of the same sign right next to each other, like this and this, whether it be negatives or positive, there's no positives because we already did adding the other day, that's why they're negative and negative, okay? That just becomes, you can get rid of all this stuff and just make it a positive 3. Okay? Here's the rule that the book gives you. There is no such thing as subtracting. There is just adding the opposite. Okay? In other words, there's no such thing as subtracting a negative or subtracting a positive 3. It's just adding a negative 3. Okay? So if you can do adding, you can do subtracting because all you're doing is changing those signs. Subtracting a positive is the same thing as adding a negative. So if you didn't struggle with adding integers, you shouldn't struggle with subtracting. But I'm going to tell you this. If this is me, this is what I'm doing. Okay, looking at this one here. I'm going to get rid of this first parenthesis and make that a -3 or a -3. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. I'm going to do this. Plus, minus a plus. Anytime you have two opposite signs, a negative and a positive always give you a minus or a negative. So this whole thing would turn to this, and then you think about that whole thing we talked about before when you have minuses in a little jar or whatever it is. I have -3, which means I have 3 minuses, and then I have 12 more of them. What do I end up with? How many minuses are in there? No, if you can't count, it's 15. Okay. All this stuff is a whole bunch of gobbledygook. You can just simplify that. This one here, this is the same thing as a -3, that parenthesis doesn't matter. Two of the same sign just give you a plus 12. If the signs are the same, it just gives you a positive. And then when you do your little jarry thing, or whatever you're thinking, you have 3 negatives and 12 positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, negative crosses off with a positive. It doesn't write. Negative crosses off with a positive. Negative crosses off with a positive. Negative crosses off with a positive. What am I left with? How many positives, Keith?
9.
Yeah, just a regular 9 of positive. This one here, I'll get to you, Elijah, in a minute. Again, this parenthesis doesn't mean anything, nor does that one. I start with a -12. Two of the same sign give me a +3. What's going to be the balance when I have 12 negatives and I match them up with 3 positives? Or think about you owing somebody $12 and then you pay them the $3 you have. What are you going to be left owing? Jaden, -9. Now, Elijah, your question. What's that?
It would be -9.
Are you talking about this one?
Yes.
Well, let's look at it. You end up with a -12. These two opposite signs give you a negative. Then you end up with a -15 because a -12 and another -3 is -15. Those are the same problem in reality. You start off with a -12, and you're taking away 3 positives. Those 3 positives match up with that. Well, no, you are subtracting 3 more. This and this give you a minus. There's no such thing as subtracting, there's just adding negatives. So it's a -12 plus another -3, that's a -15. Blah! I can tell you got that. Let me show you, let's do a few more. So it doesn't matter. How about this? A -6 and a -5. What do you get if you have those? What it doesn't have any parentheses, you don't have to worry about it, it's already simplified because there's just one negative in front of it, you have a -6 and a -5. You could say -6 minus 5, you could say -6 plus a -5, doesn't really matter. You have 6 of these negatives and you have 5 more of those negatives for a grand total of, Riley,
11 negatives.
-11. Or you have 8 minus a -1. I don't like all this gobbledygook here. 2 negatives change it to what? Same sign makes it positive. So I actually end up with 8 plus 1. What is 8 plus 1? I know that's a tough one, Lainey. 9. -1 minus a -2. -1 minus a -2. Again, I don't like all this stuff here. What is my minus a -2 going to turn to? Minus a -2 is going to turn to, Isabel? You have 2 same signs give you a +2. So a -1 plus 2 is? What's that? 1 negative crosses off with 2 of the positives there to leave you with a balance of just 1. Or +1, I know it doesn't really matter there. Elijah,
So if there's 2 positive signs.
it's positive.
2 negative signs, will be negative.
Give me an example. Tell me the exact problem you're thinking of, or make one up.
So like,
What am I starting with?
like -1 plus +2.
Plus +2? 2 of the same sign, just make it positive. Doesn't matter whether they're negative or positive. -1 plus 2. Alright, now, what Reese is going to do, I don't know if this will happen a lot more in the future or not, in order to practice this a little